Hi, welcome to episode 92 of the American Tributaries podcast, where to break out of the bubbles we all live in. We're using modern technology to explore the various currents of people in our great country, kind of like a 21st century Lewis and Clark journey. I'm your host, Michael Whidden, here in Brooklyn, New York, and thank you for joining me in this exploration of America. Today, I'm very thrilled to be joined by Walter Stein, who lives about 1,500 miles southwest of me on the western edge of the state of South Dakota, where he is the owner of PaleoAdventures, which provides dinosaur fossil digs for its clients. Walter and I were actually connected by a good friend of mine, Juliet Posner, who is also a former client of Walter. So thank you to Juliet for connecting us, and thank you, Walter, for joining me today. How are you doing, and could you share a bit of your story?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate being here. This is awesome, and of course, thank you to our mutual client for hooking
Yeah.
us up here. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I guess you were just telling me before we started that you were just on a dig. So I guess can you just let us know what you're doing with your clients and stuff when you get out there?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, a little bit about us. We've been
Yeah.
the company was called PaleoAdventures. We take people on dinosaur digs. Um, Basically, most of our clients are families with young kids and teachers, some academics, some collectors. But we take them out to private ranches where we have under a signed contract. We show them the proper techniques. We get them a set of tools, and then we turn them loose and let them dig on their own. It's a way for them to experience what real paleontology is like without committing to a 9 year degree and a whole lot more effort.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, so it's that's part of our company, and the other part, of course, is commercial sales, commercial paleontology. We're a little different than the standard academics you might see at university or museum. We're pretty much independent. Like a lot of folks out here in South Dakota, we like to be independent.
Uh, so are you a lifelong South Dakotan resident?
No, actually, I'm a transplant.
Uh,
I'm a transplant. I grew up in the wilds of southern New Jersey, of all places.
okay.
Little town called Maple Shade. It's got 25,000 people. It's barely on the map.
Hmm.
Out east anyway.
Yeah.
And growing up, I always felt a little claustrophobic. It was a lot of traffic and congestion and pollution. Don't get me wrong, I love South Jersey. So Jersey is awesome. I still have a lot of friends and family there, but I just felt like I needed to get out. I felt as a kid, I fell in love with the idea of paleontology at the age of 6,
Hmm.
and I just needed wide open spaces, and the West kind of called me. So I've been living out here in the West since 1996, either Wyoming, Colorado, or South Dakota.
Wow. I mean, you're living the fantasy that lots of children have when they first learned about dinosaurs, and most people end up peeling away from that at some point. How did you kind of keep that vision alive and get to where you are?
Sure. I like to consider myself a giant kid in a big sandbox. It's and that's kind of how we treat our clients, and we want to give people the kind of company, the kind of tour, the kind of experience that I would have loved when I was a 6 year old kid. It's about adventure, it's about excitement, it's about that whole sense of wonderment about natural history and about the earth we live in, and the sense of discovery. I mean, when you're out there under a blazing sun for months and the wind's hitting you and the sand's beating on your face and you're not finding anything and you're totally exhausted, and then you take your X-Acto blade or your dental pick and you remove a little few grains of sand, and bam, there's this beautiful T-Rex tooth sitting there, right? And you realize that you are the first human being to ever see that. This is the first time sunlight has ever hit that tooth or bone in over 66 million years. And so it's that sense of discovery is something that I try to make sure all of our tour guests get to experience. All the school kids that we talk to, that's that wonderment, that excitement about natural history that I think we need more of in school.
Yeah. That I
Oh,
mean, I never really thought about it like that way. I mean, it's already kind of amazing when you see these bones, like like not even ancient creatures, like things from almost a different world. But to realize that nobody has seen such a thing, that is something.
Yeah.
Um,
It really
w-
puts things in perspective. You realize that you're just kind of a small little drop in the cosmos, and
yeah.
life is finite. And here's a for example for a T-Rex was one of the most awesome carnivores to ever walk the planet. It died millions of years ago, 66, 67 million years ago, and poof, it was extinct within a blink of geologic time. And
Mhm.
the same can happen to all of us. I mean, so it kind of gives you that weird little perspective that you're not uh, human centric. The
Yeah.
whole Earth is not just the center of the universe. You're just a small drop in it, and I
Well,
think it's
well, when you're talking about this, one of the things that just kind of hit me is that it's interesting that when you look out into the stars, you're looking into the past, millions and tens of millions of years, billions of years, and it's the same thing actually when you're looking into the ground. So you look up, you're seeing into the past. When you look down, you're seeing into the past.
right. Yeah, the astrophysicists keep looking up. I keep telling them the answers is down right below us.
So, I mean, do you ever have like, I don't know, like existential like thoughts or crises as you're kind of like doing this and contemplating, and you might be on your own for a while digging, like, or you're like, what the, like, I don't know, that's
No,
it's a lot.
it's pretty grounded.
Uh,
It's we're literally digging in the ground. We're looking at the ground. We're finding life, ancient life in the ground. And it's a pretty grounded way of um, seeing the world. I think
yeah.
it makes you humble. It makes you understand how small you are in the big picture. Um, and I don't think there's a problem with that.
Yeah. So what did you study? Like, what was your pathway to being where you are now?
Sure. Let's see. When I was a kid, like I said, I fell in love with paleontology at the age of 6. My grandmother and my mom were big influences on me. My dad had passed away when I was very young,
Hmm.
so unfortunately I didn't get to meet my father. But
I'm
um,
sorry.
it's cool. My mom took me over to Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences and Franklin Institute. So I fell in love with museums at an early age. My grandmother, she used to go down the seashore, the Jersey Shore, and collect shark's teeth and seashells, and we'd kind of put them all together and make little sculptures out of them and classify them. So I started my journey young, um, as far as thinking about the natural world as a kind of naturalist and looking at things. And in paleontology, if you want to be a paleontologist, there is no undergraduate school for paleontology. There's nothing that offers an undergraduate BS BA degree. Typically, you start in the two branch sciences. Paleontology is kind of a blended science. It's a split between geology, the study of the earth, and biology, the study of life. And you kind of mash those together, and you get the study of ancient life. So typically, if you want to become a paleontologist, you start either with geology or biology. And I liked rocks, I liked minerals, I liked tectonics and volcanism and all that good stuff. So I started on the geology side of things, and ended up like I said, I was kind of claustrophobic in New Jersey, so I went to a school which was within driving distance for a day, close enough that I could get back home if I needed to, but far enough away that my mom wouldn't be looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes.
The sweet spot.
Hey, it's college, right? But
Yeah.
I went to a place called Appalachian State University in North Carolina,
Mhm.
which had a phenomenal geology program, and I went there, and great school. It was literally like 5 minutes from the Blue Ridge Parkway. Whenever I had trouble with math and calculus, I would go sit on the Blue Ridge Parkway with my dog and meditate.
Mhm.
um, and then I got a BS degree in geology, which enables me to BS a lot. Uh, and I didn't have the money for graduate school. When I left college, I had $215.23 to my name or something like that.
Ooh.
And didn't have the money for the graduate school. Didn't have the patience for the politics of academia. You've interviewed some academics over the years. I'm sure they've talked about some of the difficulties of getting a PhD and holding a PhD and all that, and the university politics. I didn't have the patience for that. I said, somebody give me a shovel and let me dig. Um, I spent and I sent off about 50 resumes when I graduated, and I got 3 responses, and all of them said, "Go get your PhD. There's no jobs here."
Uh,
So paleontology is a hard field to get into.
yeah. That and so wait, did you get your PhD or
No, I did
what
not.
happened after that?
I did not. Yeah,
So
no,
what happened after that?
well, like I said, I couldn't find a job in paleontology. Couldn't get any grunt work in paleontology. Um, there's only about 3,000 professional academic paleontologists in the United States and Canada, so it's a very, very tough field to get into. It's very competitive. There's a lot of infighting and cliques and camps in paleontology. A lot of politics in paleontology. Um, So since I couldn't get in, one of my other professors helped me to get a job in mineral exploration. And so I joined a company out of Virginia that was doing environmental work. We were doing mineral work, looking for gold and silver. One of my clients, one of my main clients that I got hooked up with, was searching for North American diamond deposits. And so they flew us around the country. Look, it was basic grunt geology. Diamond exploration sounds really cool, but it was really just me with 60-pound buckets of sand strapped to my back and hiking in the creeks and screening and strapping mud to
Wow.
my back and hiking it out of there and sending to the lab. But it was fun. It was good. It was fun. I got to see a lot of the country. Got to see a lot of the geology. And one of the things that it really benefited me was in the course of doing the exploration for diamonds, we would have to approach private landowners and get their permission to go onto their land and take a sample and send it to the lab. So I got to meet lots of people from all over the place, from Arkansas to Missouri to Idaho to Colorado to Montana to South Dakota. And I got to talk directly to ranchers and landowners and learn how to discuss things with them. And it was a great opportunity because it's the same thing I do now as an independent commercial paleontologist. I speak with private ranchers. I can only work on private land, mind you. So I have to speak with ranchers, understand what they need. I tell them what we do, and get access to their property to find fossils.
So if you find something really cool or really valuable on somebody's property, have you already signed like a contract about how that gets handled? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. We don't set foot on anybody's property unless we have a signed contract with the rancher.
Mm, mm,
It outlines protections for them as well as protections for me. It says if I drive out on their property and my truck starts a fire on their grass by accident, then my insurance pays for it, or I'm responsible
mm,
for it.
mm.
And if I fall down and break my leg climbing up a cliff, it's not their fault. It's not their
Yeah.
responsibility. I don't pay for that, or they don't pay for that.
Mm.
And then if we find something, the rancher gets a percentage of whatever we find and sell. So it's a
Okay.
positive incentive for them to allow us out there.
Right. Otherwise, the land's just sitting there and nothing's happening.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I've got a few of my academic folks on the other side of the political aisle, and they are constantly harping on wanting to do eminent domain. Let's use eminent domain to confiscate lands that we think are important for science and then steal this from ranchers and steal fossils they think are significant from ranchers.
Mm.
And unfortunately, if they're successful in that, I hope they're never successful in that, but it's just enough of that little rumor going around where
Mm.
I'll approach a rancher and I go, well, I don't know if I want you out there because your government's going to come here and take my property. And I'm like,
Mm.
nope, they don't have that. They can't do that. They've tried in
Mm.
certain cases, but
Oh,
yeah, yeah. You put yourself in the perspective of the rancher. If they have I think any thoughts that they could have their land taken from them, what are they going to do?
great.
They're going to they're going to bar their gates and lock their doors, and they're not going to let anybody out there. And all those fossils that are sitting out there in that freeze thaw zone are eventually going to crumble and rot to dust. If you're not out there collecting them, they're going to crumble and fall apart. So it's essential for people to be out there in the Badlands looking for these things, because within about 5 to 10 years of superficial exposure, they're heavily damaged.
Wow. Um,
That was a lot.
why I
I threw a lot at you.
Yeah, no, no. Well, the one thing that just keeps coming to my mind is like just simply why is it that, like, if I understand correctly, like South Dakota and the area like Montana, Wyoming, like, why is that such a hotbed for dinosaur fossils?
Oh, well, it's one of the best places in the world. Literally, that whole
Mm.
Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota. It is
Uh-huh.
literally one of the best places in the world to find dinosaur fossils. Primarily because it's the right age of rock. It's the right environments of deposition. Um, and all this rock has been tilted and lifted up by the Rocky Mountains as the Rockies were pushing their way together, and it was bending and folding everything up like this. So that brought a lot of these older sediments or older rocks up to the surface again. And then the climate in the western United States helps because it's arid, but then you have these massive storms that come through, so you get a lot of erosion. So it's the combination of the right age of rock, the right type of rock, uplift, erosion, and as far as I'm concerned, it's great because there's a lot of private land, and so I need all five of those things happening. I have to have the right rock, the right age, erosion, and private land. So
And I guess like flatland, does that also make a difference? I mean, like, doing this like in the mountains, or I assume.
yeah, you can find fossils pretty much all around the world.
Uh-huh.
You literally can find fossils all over the place. In fact, the first
Mhm.
one in North America, the first partial skeleton of a dinosaur from North America, most people don't know this, was actually in Haddonfield, New Jersey, about
Oh,
15
really?
about 15 minutes from where I grew up. We ran cross country against Haddonfield.
Wow.
Um, but but yeah, that was the first partial skeleton of a dinosaur in North America in 1858. Um,
Wow.
so so yeah, so you have dinosaurs under South Jersey. You have dinosaurs in Connecticut, and you have under Washington D.C. There's been a handful of dinosaur specimens found.
Mhm.
Um, so so yeah, you can have dinosaurs pretty much anywhere, but you need that uplift from the mountains to really bring them to the surface.
Okay.
Um,
So what you're describing is also like, it sounds like as much as we know, there's still so much we don't know because you are limited. There are certain places where it's more ideal, but there's other places it's less ideal.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In the last couple decades, for example, there have been paleontologists, very brave, crazy paleontologists, who are braving the frigid weather of Antarctica, finding dinosaurs down in Antarctica. There's some on the north slope of Alaska. There's a whole bunch of new discoveries coming out of Alaska we didn't expect. Um,
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised that beneath New Jersey, for example, there's a lot more dinosaurs than we anticipate. The trick is getting down to them. You got to get past all the blacktop and the pizza parlors and the auto dealerships,
The malls and
all the malls and glass citadels, right?
yeah.
Get under that. Dig down about 20, 30 feet. You hit in some of those Cretaceous age deposits, and you'll find more stuff. The reason why we find so much out in the West is that it's there, it's on the surface, it's eroding out, it's tumbling out of cliffs and buttes and badlands. So
Wow.
it's much easier here to do
Uh,
paleontology than it would be back east.
so when you ended up moving out there, I mean, you're an Easterner, you've always wanted more space, but was there any kind of like adjustments for you being like really centered in a different part of the country?
Mm. Well, yeah, there's always adjustments whenever you go to a different place and you settle down. There's always some local thing going on that you're not familiar with, or a local attitude, or a local cultural change or cultural norm. I guess the best way to describe that would be I could tell you a story from Wyoming. I went to when I moved out to Wyoming. I got my first job in paleontology. I was at the Wyoming Dinosaur Center, and I was in my 20s. This was I was in the 90s, and I was there, so I forget parts of it. We used to go to this little bar. I called it Jim's House of Death, and we went to this bar, and I became pretty good friends with the bartender and a couple of the waiters and whatnot. And one day we were sitting there drinking a few beers, and this guy from California came up, and he says, "Boy, this is so beautiful out here, man. This is such a gorgeous place. I love it. I, I almost want to come out here, but I bet the weather's really bad out here. It's horrible, isn't it?" And my bartender friend, he looks at him all serious. He's like, "Oh yeah, the weather is absolutely horrible. Yeah, we get snow and it piles up and it's 6 feet high and it's minus 20 degrees all day long. Yeah, it's just about 6, 7, 8 months of the year. It's just almost impossible." Yeah. And the California guy goes, "Oh yeah, I figured as much." Now, and he walks away. And I turned to my friend, the bartender. And I said, "I've been here 2 years. It's nothing like that. It's actually pretty nice and mild in the winter. Where the last 2 years." He's like, and he turns to me and says, "Well, I know that, but you don't want them to stay, do you?" So, out west, for example, it takes them a little while to get used to you. You have to adapt to them. They're not going to change for you. You have to understand what their mindset is. They're out in the West because they love the open spaces. They don't want overdevelopment. Denver's a great example. Denver is becoming a mega city. It just houses popping up all over the place, and tech companies and all this other stuff. The locals are like, this is insane. This is not why I grew up. This is not how I grew up here. This is not what I enjoy. And so now they're migrating to other places that are less busy and congested.
And that I guess mindset sort of sounds like it permeates that like Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota area. It's all about the same.
Yeah, yeah, it's all the same. Certainly, the Northern Plains. We have kind of an independent,
Mm.
libertarian streak in us. We want to just leave us alone. You do your thing, just leave us alone. Let us be. That's
Well, but you were an outsider at one point. Did you feel any
right.
kind of like pushback on that? Did it take you a while to kind of for people to say, okay, I don't what are people looking for when they're evaluating a new arrival and whether or not they want to embrace them?
Sure. Again, like I think I said, they're looking for more of that independent streak, that they have a mind of their own. They're not going to be swayed by um, some of the international politics, let's say. Um, and they're long to trust. It takes them a while to build trust. I
Mm.
think, as an outsider, it took me a few years to build some trust. But once the trust was there, then it's a lot of our ranchers, for example. Many of our ranchers, they start out as a business relationship, but eventually they become like family and friends. Um, but you have to build that trust. It's not instantaneous. Like growing up in New Jersey, it's instantaneous. You're from New York, right?
Yeah.
I imagine New York, New Jersey are very similar in this regard. You could meet someone, and in the first 5 seconds, the first 5 minutes, you go, "Oh, I like this guy," or "Oh, I can't stand this. What is this?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's very little middle ground. It's all I like you or I hate you.
Mm.
Back in Jersey, at least that's how I felt.
Hmm.
Um, Out west, it's okay. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know who they are. What's going on? Well, okay, I like that. All right. Okay, I guess
Yeah.
he's one of them.
Yeah.
So
No, no, no. I guess from talking with some people, like this is my theory, and I throw this out. Is this podcast is all about learning, so I feel like to learn you have to have an opinion, but it's got to be subject to further input. So
sure.
one of the things, like when I compare New York to, someplace like South Dakota, North Dakota, etc., is like the population density is so much different. It's like mind-boggling different. Like in New York City, it's 26,000 people per square mile. By you, it might be 5 people per square mile, and there's a huge difference there, obviously, and consequences to that. But one of the things that somebody had talked about also is like, in New York City, if somebody has a car problem, they'll pull over to the side. They're going to call the tow service, whatever. They don't want somebody to pull over to help them, because to them that's like terrifying, right? Like you're like, what? Why are you pulling over, right? And it's not just like paranoia. It's just there's reasons like that. That's how we are. But on
Yeah,
the other hand, like by there aren't a lot of people on the road. So if somebody has a problem, you really have to pull over. Is my perception, because that
absolutely.
could be you someday.
That is absolutely 100% right. When I could take you to places in South Dakota where the cows outnumber humans about 1,000 to 1.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing out there, and it's that nothingness that I love because it's absolutely beautiful. It's quiet, it's
Mm.
peaceful. You just listen to the air and the wind blowing. But when we're driving some of those backcountry roads, um, in South Dakota, we wave. Every car that goes by, we wave because that person could be a potential help if we got stranded, if the truck broke down, if there was a problem, if I, God forbid, had a heart attack, fell out of the truck. That person might be driving by in 10 minutes as they're going back home or wherever they're going. And yeah, you have to rely on your neighbors. You have to rely on your just even
Mm.
strangers that pass by. So
So
you almost have to be nicer.
right, yeah. So
Now,
so then the other part of that is I also feel like then another scenario might be like, if there's a fire or there's flooding or whatever, there's again
yeah,
same codependent, the interdependence. That's more like my life depends on you and your life depends on me, and if there's something happening, I am going to rush into that house to help you and your family, because we're in this together. There isn't like, if you're in New York City, there's a fire department, you call, they get here in 10 minutes. You don't
yeah,
have that when you're so sparsely spread out. So my theory or my thinking is kind of like, in a community like yours, because people are saying like, once you're in this community and I know that you're like one of us, I'm going to be ready to give my life up to you without question. Then they don't want to just do that for somebody who's an interloper or somebody who's not going to also reciprocate that.
right.
That's just like my perception. That would seem to kind of make sense. So they're going to keep you at a distance until they know, okay, you get the value here. I can trust you to help me because my instinct is to help you. And if I don't feel
Yeah,
like you're going to do that in return, then you're not part of the community. But once you're in, we got your back no matter what.
yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think that's very
Okay.
accurate, and we
Okay.
see it out west not only with just being friendly and waving to people as they're driving down the road, but all the ranchers, for example, have little fire trucks. They've got a little old beater truck that's got a big tank on it, and a pump and a sprayer. And if there's ever any lightning strikes on the ranch, ranchers from 3, 4, 5 different ranches anywhere near, they'll come in and they'll help put that out. Yeah, we have volunteer firefighters out here, volunteer firefighter departments, but it might take them an hour to get there.
Yeah.
Um, so out here, you have to be independent. You have to work together with your neighbors. You don't always get along with your neighbors, but you try.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if you don't get along with them, they're still going to show up with the fire truck because that fire could come and spread to their ranch.
Right.
Um, so yeah,
Okay.
it's
Interesting. All
just a
right.
different way of I guess going about life.
Yeah, and I think to me the other part of it, and as you know, since you lived out here, is also like I don't I think that it's not fair. It wouldn't necessarily characterize like people out here as necessarily being like cold hearted about it. I think it's just different, because if you had a fire, you call a firefighter like that,
Yeah,
and they
it's
can get
easier.
here. Right.
You
You
call them
don't have to do
professional.
that. Right. You call a
You call them
professional. And why?
professional.
Right. But and I think that's kind of like, we like, in terms of like, before you even get into like the contentious political discussions, is to realize that people are wired differently for survival in different areas. So what works wonderfully, or what works as good as it could in New York, might be completely like the opposite of what works in South Dakota.
No,
And I think
absolutely.
that to me is why, like, for this podcast, I always consider it super political, because it's like, before we even talk about those issues, let's just try to understand the viewpoints and the existences that we all have, which are all, there's similarities, but there's lots of differences.
Yeah, and I think that's right. There's differences in every little region of the United States. Different again, might goes back to migration patterns and the early development of the country and so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, we definitely. I like to when we have different people from different places. I like to make sure that we sit down and we go, well, how do we start? Let's start where we agree. We agree
Yeah.
on X, Y, and Z. Perfect. Okay. Let's kind of shut the constant far left, far right, just yapping back and forth. Kind of shut them out for a second. Turn the volume down on them for a second. Where do we agree? Okay, so we agree on this, this, and that. Okay, perfect. Let's do that, and then we'll worry about the other stuff that we don't quite agree on, and then try and figure out, well, how could as an only child, I got my cake and I ate it too.
Yeah.
I got to have a little bit of both. So I understood that, I like to get my way. So, okay, so you want to get your way and you want to get your way. But how can we do both? Is there a third way? Is there a, not a, I wouldn't say a compromise. Compromise isn't quite the right word. Um, is there a third possible way to solve the problem? Because we both really want to solve the problem. How can we solve the same problem in a third way?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess
If
we're
that
we're
makes any
trying to do a
sense.
little. Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And
This
and
morning
I,
I'm rambling a little bit.
that's all right. And that's still your first cup of coffee, maybe?
Uh, Earl Grey hot.
Okay, tea. All right, nice, nice.
Yeah.
So, when you go out with your clients, what is a dig like?
Oh, a dig is pretty. It's fun. We take them to again private ranches that are way out in the
Hmm.
middle of nowhere. So
Hmm.
we get clients from all over the world. We have folks from Europe and Japan and Australia and one of my Japanese clients, for example, have been coming out with us for 15, 16 years. We're about to
Wow.
have our 20th anniversary here. The next year is our 20th anniversary. So anyway, they come out. We have a small field station here. It's a little office. It's about a 3,000 square foot office where I've got my lab and we've got some exhibits set up. That's where I'm at right now. We take them through the exhibits. We show them the things I expect them to find in the field. We go over, how to identify fossil dinosaur bone. We talk about the common ones. We talk about some of the rare ones, and then we try and we go over the rules. As a lawful neutral character, I have to have rules. That's D&D reference if you're
Yeah,
familiar with
I know.
that.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah,
wasn't
you
sure
got to
if you were
throw that.
chaotic. Yeah.
I'd be a lawful neutral character or lawful.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, uh, yeah, we show them the rules, and for us, there's a lot of different people to take you out dinosaur digging. For example, some of the groups are way more academic, and you're going to learn a ton of things from an academic dig. They're going to teach you all the right tool techniques, and they're going to talk about the science. But you're not allowed to keep anything on an academic dig. Pretty much every fossil that they recover, they want to put on a velvet cushion in a museum somewhere. And usually, they wind up in a basement collecting dust. On the extreme other side of the coin, you have on the far right, we have the commercial diggers who are just in it for the money. They just go out and they just rip bones out of the ground and they don't care about the science. They don't document anything. Half the time they're putting stuff in their pocket and the rancher is losing out. Um, and yeah, there's no documentation whatsoever. So you've got both extremes. And here at PaleoAdventures, we try to find the Tao of paleontology, the middle ground. Um, so the whole yin yang of it. We try and figure out. So we split our fossils into three categories: common fossils, commercial grade fossils, and scientific grade fossils. So common things the guests get to keep: little bone fragments, chunks of common dinosaur bone, fossil plants, things like that, little dinosaur teeth. All that, it's very common. It could take you pretty much anywhere from Montana to Canada, and you'd find pretty much the same stuff anywhere you walk out in the Badlands. So this kind of stuff, I think, is more valuable in the hands of a child, because that kid, what's he going to do with it? He's going to take that little dinosaur bone. He's going to take it to school. He's going to become show it off to all his friends, show it off to a teacher, do a science fair project. He becomes an ambassador of paleontology. So in his hands, that little fragment is valuable, and it's an educational tool. Whereas in a museum setting, it's collecting dust. No one's going to care about it. No one's going to research it. Now, the next grade up is commercial grade stuff. And commercial grade things, they have a little bit of collectible value, but they're from a common species like Triceratops or Edmontosaurus or something like that, right? So pretty common species. Museums have hundreds of them. I don't mind selling off a few little pieces to help pay the electric bill. Because we're independent, we do have to fund our own digs. So we don't rely on grants. We don't rely on any tax dollars. Everything we do, we survive or fail based on the quality of our excavations and our programs. And so we do have to support ourselves. I will take something like, here's my show and tell. I like show and
Yeah,
tell.
awesome.
So we might take something like, there's some tyrannosaur teeth, for example.
Wow.
So
Oh,
it
wow.
wasn't. These weren't connected to a skeleton. They're not part of a skeleton. They're not part of something seriously scientifically significant. T-Rex, again, was one of the most amazing carnivores to ever walk the planet.
Jesus. That's fearsome. Like, those are so big.
Yeah. These are awesome. T-Rex had, in its lifetime, they had about 50 of these in their mouth at any given moment, right? And they were just like sharks. They were constantly replacing their teeth over and over again. So when they bit down into something, they might snap off a tooth. And that tooth would eventually fall to the ground, or sometimes they even pass right through the gut of the T-Rex. It swallows its own tooth. And then you know where it went out. Yeah. So anyway, they had lots of teeth throughout their life. Now, not as much as a shark. A shark could have over 26,000 teeth in a lifetime, but a T-Rex probably had 2,000 to 3,000 teeth in a lifetime. Whereas, how many claws did they have on their hands? Just 4. That's all they
Okay.
had. So if you find if I were to find a tooth, I call that nature providing me a grant. Because collectors love these.
Yeah.
Now I did keep these because these are pathological teeth. They have a weird split to them.
Huh.
But so these are more scientific grade. But a lot of the tyrannosaur teeth we find are just commercial grade bits and pieces. We sell them off to collectors and hobbyists, and that helps fund our other operations.
Yeah.
Then the next step above that is the science grade stuff. And science grade stuff is more rare. When it comes to things like a Triceratops, for example, there's over 350 known skeletons and skulls of Triceratops been found since the 1800s. So they're very well known. The anatomy is well known. Their taxonomy is well known. Those are more commercial. But you find something like this. This one is a Leptoceratops jaw, for example.
Oh.
Now, the academics, there's no teeth in it, but you can see the tooth sockets.
Yeah.
This is a distant cousin of Triceratops. A little bit smaller, about the size of a Great Dane, perhaps. And they supposedly went extinct 10 million years earlier, right? And so most everybody, every student, every academic, every independent went, oh, well, Leptoceratops shouldn't be here in the Hell Creek Formation. They're not here. They went extinct, right? The academics said that they went extinct, therefore they did. But they didn't. Mm. We see them at the end of the Cretaceous. We see isolated bones. We don't have any complete skeletons, but we have isolated bones. And then you There's maybe 4 jaws like that that's ever been found.
Wow.
But even 4 is enough to tell us that here's an animal that was thought to be extinct in the latest Cretaceous, and now we know it still was there right before the big asteroid hit.
Mm.
So some things are more important for science. That would be an example of it. It's like in that movie with Indiana Jones where he yells, "Well, that one belongs in a museum."
Uh,
Some things do, right? So, as far as I'm concerned, some things are better in the hands of kids and teachers to inspire people. Some
yeah.
things are better to pay off, to sell off to collectors, and that's a positive incentive for ranchers to allow us out there. That gives them a thank you, a nice thank you for letting us out there. It pays my bills, puts my kid through college or kids through college. Um, and then the science grade stuff we hold only for museums and universities. And so something like that Leptoceratops jaw, or let's see, here's another one. This one's fun. Something like this is only going to go to a university or museum. That is one of 2 in the world.
uh, wow. What is it?
What is it? Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. What is it? It is the nose of a Dracorex. Dracorex hogwartsia, a very rare dinosaur. It's only known for a single skull, one skull. It's at the Indianapolis Children's Museum.
Uh-huh.
And we found another bone of it in our quarries. And so something like this can help understand anatomy, physiology, taxonomy. This is basically one of the nasal bones.
Oh, wow. Wow.
This is a type of dinosaur called a pachycephalosaurid.
Uh
Are you familiar with the terms?
huh. Beyond Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus Rex. No, wish I was.
Well, Pachycephalosaurus is they're dome-headed dinosaurs. They have like a big
Okay.
football helmet-like skull.
Okay.
And they've got these big spikes that come off the back, and they've got little spikes and knobby bone hornlets like those on the nose.
Uh huh.
The thought, one of the hypotheses about pachycephalosaurs is that they would lower their heads and just kind of ram like bighorn sheep, um, and that's a possibility. But what I like to tell all the kids when they come through the program is, yeah, that's a good hypothesis. It's a good educated scientific guess. But one of the first questions you have to ask whenever you're evaluating what a paleontologist is saying on TV or whatever is you have to ask them, how much have you got? Because if you have just little scattered bits and pieces, little bits of evidence, it's not enough data set. It's not enough data points to really statistically back up your hypothesis and your theories in many cases. So with Pachycephalosaurus, for example, guess how many skulls of Pachycephalosaurus has been found since 1943?
Two?
8. There's only 8
Eight?
known skulls. Guess how many
Wow.
bodies? 1.
None. One.
It's only 40% complete. So, you don't have enough data to make some of these wild um, um, theories that some of the paleontologists will tell you on TV.
It's more speculation than it is hypothesis of that.
A lot of speculation. Yeah, you tend to get a lot of speculation, and then you combine that. And one of the other problems with academia right now is that you combine the speculation aspect of it with the lack of these more rare specimens, um, with the fact that in paleontology you publish or perish. If you don't publish, you're going to perish.
Right.
It's a saying that you have in all the sciences and medical and whatnot, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But in paleontology, it is even more important because there's limited dollars to go around for research. There's limited money for museums. Often paleontology is viewed on by the other sciences, I think, as not as important. And, we can get into that later if you want. It's not going to cure cancer, but it definitely is pretty an important science. We're studying these processes over the long term. We're studying evolution and climate change and all that kind of stuff. We're studying that over the long term. So it's a very, very important field. But where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. So paleontologists they have to publish a lot. and they're constantly fighting for a job and tenure. And so a lot of times they will publish a paper on very little data and then put their foot down and say, this is exactly what happened. But then you read the paper and you go, oh, well, you got half of a half of a bone from the toe. How can you even say anything about their locomotion or their mobile abilities?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that is one of the issues. Oh,
You
I
know, it,
started rambling again.
no, no. Well, it's interesting because you actually reminding me a little bit of a conversation I had with an early guest who's now an admiral in the naval intelligence.
Oh,
And one of the things we talked about was how, like, in the intelligence world, they also have to kind of sift through information to decide what's real and not real. And he discussed, like, I think, like, even like when you brief the president on something, like, this is what we think it is, but this is like our confidence level, and then these are the possibilities, and we don't believe in those because of this. It was more it was a more sobered analysis than I think what you see in the news, certainly, where people just say this is what it is, and there is
oh,
no, like,
sure.
humility or couching. And it sounds like that's kind of in your field it can be very similar, where it's like there's a lot of things said, but you have to really kind of parse through to figure out what's really going on.
Right. Right, right. The politics are you have to publish or you're going to get forgotten
Yeah.
about. You're not going
Yeah.
to get the grants. You're not going to get the loans. You're not going to get money for your department. You're not going to be able to hire additional preparators and
Hmm.
so on and so forth if you don't say X,
Hmm.
even if there's not enough data to say X.
Right.
So
So are you? I mean, you sounds like you're still out in the field, but, like, do you have do you live nearby?
yeah, we used to snowbird back and forth to Florida.
Oh, okay.
My wife is actually from Florida, and so we'd dig in the summertime, collect all the fossils in the summertime, do the tours, and then we'd head back to Florida and prepare them there at my house down in Florida. And we sold the house in Florida during the Great Migration, and
Which one is that?
the COVID
Okay,
migration,
all
first
right,
COVID migration. Oh,
all
yeah,
right.
yeah. We all began to sort ourselves out, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We sold the house in Florida and then moved up to South Dakota full time. So I actually live
Okay,
right here at the field station.
okay. So what what is the winter like? For real?
I can't tell you that. That would betray my fucking Wyoming.
if if
Oh,
I wish I had an audience that would be big enough to be able to say you can't share that, but at least as of right now.
that's a trade secret. It's a local regional secret.
Yeah.
Well, no, I can tell you that it's South Dakota. There's an expression in South Dakota. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. It's going to change. It literally will change overnight. In fact, the neighboring town here used to be in the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest swing in temperature in a 24-hour period. It went from like 70 degrees, I think, down to like minus 22 in a 24-hour period. Um, and then also it's I shouldn't just be speaking for South Dakota because South Dakota is pretty diverse as well. You have what we call the Missouri River basically splits South Dakota in half. So you have what we call East River and West River, and there's two different cultures between East and West. There is different economics driving it. East is more farming. West is more ranching. East is cold, bitter cold. It snows. It's like the movie Fargo. It just builds up and stays that way on the
Oh,
east
wow.
side. On the west, they call this the banana belt of South Dakota, where one day it could be minus 20 degrees, or 1 week. Like last year, right before Christmas, we had a week that was just stupid cold. It was like minus 20 with a wind chill of minus 50. You just don't go out. You don't do anything. You pack. You go grocery shopping for a week or two.
Hmm.
If you're on a ranch 60 miles from town, you have a big freezer full of food that and backup generators if it goes down.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, the weather out here, and we get hail. Hail's another big problem out here. In 2022, we had a major hailstorm come through Belle Fourche. It knocked out 20,000 windows in town.
Oh
Um,
my God.
and it took out part of our roof. It took out three of my windows. It took out three of my trucks. So hail is always a big concern out here. Um, when we're out in the field on a dig, I'm watching the weather and the radar pretty closely because we do get some nasty afternoon thunder showers from time to time, and you do not want to be out in the middle of the prairie in the Badlands with a mega hailstorm coming in. So a lot of times we have to pack up everything and bolt out of there. Sometimes we call it right, sometimes we call it wrong.
Yeah.
There's been a few times where we got hit before we could get out, and then we're slipping and sliding trying to get up the Badlands, and
Oh wow.
so it's a little fun part of the adventure. Haven't lost anybody yet.
What I know the summer, so can the summers be really really hot?
Yeah, the summers
Yeah.
can. It goes from winter to summer pretty quick.
Uh,
We don't
okay.
have that nice, real long fall, that nice long spring. Um, it's in the summertime. It's 100 degrees. It's 90s and hundreds. In the wintertime, it's usually around 30 to 40. But it on days where Canada is trying to kill us, uh,
Mhm.
they'll send down this cold wave of cold air, and it'll get down to the minus teens.
Okay. So, what for you then?
Vegas
Like,
is
say,
different.
if you're not on a dig, so this is just a day off for you. Do you have like an ideal, like a perfect day, a perfect off day for you? What do you do?
Sundays are my off days. I will sleep in until as long as people will let me,
Hmm.
uh, and spend time with the family and whatnot on Sundays. And then Monday's my office day. I'm usually trying to catch up with about 50, 60 different emails and phone calls and sales here or whatever projects we're doing. We had 6 media contacts this month. So
Oh wow.
so you're part of the six. I had a group from there was a lady doing a book. She's in Paris, and
Uh-huh.
she's writing a book on commercial versus academic. Then we had a documentary crew come through from Singapore who were doing again this commercial versus academic dichotomy. And let's see. Oh, there was a couple local newspapers as well.
Uh-huh.
So
The
Mondays are kind of an office day to do a bunch of different things, and then the rest of the week is field and tours. So yeah, I'm still in the
mhm.
field.
Okay. So you do tours for like 4 months of the year, is that right? If I saw that on the website.
Usually 3.
Okay. And then what? I mean, on the other 9 months, are you? What else are you? What's keeping you busy?
So like as soon as the weather starts to break in April and May, um, I'll get out and I'll start doing exploration. So usually April, May, I'm talking with landowners. I'm looking at aerial photographs. I'm looking for badlands. I'm looking over my geologic maps. I'm doing some research, and then it to find skeletons. It's not that difficult. Any dummy can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Um, they You basically figure out where to focus your efforts, and then you hike up and down the badlands, miles and miles a day, looking for little scraps of bone tumbling out of the hillside. And then when you find those trails of bone, you chase them up to the layer it's coming from, and then you decide whether you're going to dig it or not. So that's kind of my April and May. I'm out exploring, trying to locate skeletons or bone beds or something of significance. Or if I'm doing a research project, I'm working on the research project, the planning.
Okay.
Um, Summer is the tours. So that's basically the tours help fund our operations and our digs. It enables me to be independent. Um, so June, July, August, and in a small part of September, I'll be doing tours. And then fall, which is September, October, this is when I have to finish up the digs. If I'm working on a skeleton or a bone bed or whatever I'm working on, I have to have it wrapped up and finished before the snow flies. Once you don't want to have a skeleton exposed to the elements. Um, there's each The bones are very fragile, so they have little hairline cracks. After being buried in the ground for over 66 million years, they're cracked, they're fractured, and so on and so forth. So if you get a little bit of moisture in those fractures and cracks, what's going to happen in the wintertime when it freezes?
It expands.
It expands. Yeah, frost wedging. So you get that water begins to freeze and expand, and that little tiny hairline crack gets bigger, and the next year it gets bigger and bigger, and pretty soon it starts tumbling down the hill, and you've got nothing but dust. So right now, for example, I have a mega question that's in I'm dealing with. We have this duck-billed dinosaur skeleton. Um, Duckbills are large plant eaters. They could get to about 40 feet long. The main one here in the Hell Creek Formation is called Edmontosaurus, and but they have this big beak, kind of like a duck, so we call them duckbills, hadrosaurs. Anyway, these big plant-eating herbivorous animals were very, very common. They were traveling along the river systems, say, 66 million years ago, chewing on plants and migrating in big groups. So we find lots of them. And here it's the end of the summer. We have this duckbill skeleton. It was found a couple of years ago. I've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off because I'm more interested in finding something, like this with
Yeah.
claws, something bigger and cooler,
Yeah.
right? So it's just a duckbill, but I have to get it out of the ground. As a paleontologist, that's my job.
Yeah.
So I reluctantly went there a week ago, 2 weeks ago, to do some cleanup, to finish up. Was on the edge. I figured I'd collect a few more bones. It's the end of the season, so everything is broken. My arms are broken. My knees are broken. I'm tired. I'm ready to go sit on the beach and sip margaritas or something. Um, and as I'm digging on this skeleton, I pop off a chunk of rock and I flip it over to make sure there's no bone or anything in it. And what I see is a skin impression. So it's the actual impression of where the skin of this tail, this duck-billed dinosaur tail, was wedged in that clay. The skin itself is gone. That's decayed and broken down years ago. So there's no organic material, but the impression of the skin is there. So now I've got another decision. I was getting ready to just kind of seal it up, put a plaster jacket on it, and bury it, and come back to it
Yeah.
next spring. But now snow's going to fly in about 3 weeks. Do I continue to excavate further and find out what's going on, which part of me wants to do, potentially leaving it exposed for the winter, which I don't want to do, or do I try and bury it and forget it till spring, like was the original plan? So these are kind of the questions as a fossil hunter, I guess you'd call it,
Mm.
dinosaur hunter. Those are some of the questions that you have to go ask yourself.
And I take it that like a skin impression is pretty rare to find.
Yeah, I've worked on a number of duckbill skeletons, quite a few duckbills over the years, probably about 6 or 7 skeletons, and 2 of them had partial skin impressions on the hips.
Mm-hmm.
There are some others. There's one that was found in the early 1900s. They call it the Sternberg mummy. This is in the American Museum of Natural History in New York there. Gorgeous specimen. There's another one up in North Dakota they call Dakota. That one has large sections of skin impressions, and it even has a naturally formed mold of where the meat, the soft tissue, the muscle was. So you can kind of the fleshy bits of the feet. You can see
Wow.
what it was shaped like. They're gone. The actual organics are gone, but the tissue was solid enough and buried so quickly in such fine sediment that it preserved the shape and the structure. So yeah, having skin impressions ups the game on
Mm-hmm.
this duckbill skeleton. It's way more important than I had originally thought it was going to be.
So if you could encounter one dinosaur in its like actual life form live, what would it be?
Well, that's a great question. Um, I'd have to see one of my favorites, and I brought kind of like, again, I like show and tell. I'm a
Mm.
visual learner, so I had to bring my show and tell bit. This is this is one of my favorite types of dinosaurs. This is a
Wow.
cast. Obviously, I wouldn't hold the original like this. This is a cast, but this is from a dinosaur called Anzu wiley. It's a giant North American oviraptor. And you can see the talons on this thing. They had these are the unguals, the bony portion of the talon. Um, you'd have a keratin claw over the top of that, so it would extend this probably about that long. Um, so very well developed hands for manipulating and grasping prey and things like that. And this animal, this Anzu wiley, was it shares over 100 unique characteristics with modern day birds. So this is strong evidence to suggest that birds are the great grandkids of dinosaurs, or certainly meat-eating dinosaurs like this. Um, and you know what a cassowary bird is?
No. What's that?
Cassowaries. They are one of the most dangerous birds right now living today. They're down in Australia. They have this big crest on the top of its head. They've got a beak, very sharp beak. They walk upright. They're ground walking like an emo or an ostrich. Um, and so these cassowaries have been known to attack humans. They've been known to kill humans. There was a there was a breeder down in Florida a few years ago, and I don't know the whole exact story, but something happened where he ticked this bird off, and there was a 6 foot tall bird, and it jumped up and kicked him in the chest and killed him instantly. It's like a living raptor, right?
Wow.
Um, so I guess the roundabout way of answering your question, if I want to see one of my favorite types of dinosaurs, oviraptors, all I really have to do is go to Australia and New Zealand and see these cassowary birds in action.
Uh-huh.
They are this Anzu had a crest, a big tall crest, just like a cassowary. It had a beak like a cassowary. It was probably an omnivore like a cassowary, so ate a little bit of meat, a little bit of fruits and veggies and whatnot. Um, and the other reason why this is, other than it's a very cool dinosaur, is and scientifically important dinosaur. But the other reason why it's one of my favorites is because I got to work on the first two skeletons.
Oh, wow.
Yes. The first specimen was found by a good friend of mine. He was a commercial collector out of Kansas, and he was hunting in the Hell Creek Formation and found some meat eating theropod bones. So, just like this. He didn't know what it was. He knew it was a meat eater, he knew it was something scientifically significant. And so he ended up calling my mentor, Mike Trebold, and me along to go look at it in the field. And so I got to do all the scientific documentation on the first two specimens. I got to be the one to do a lot of the excavation. I found the jaw, which was pretty awesome to see that for the
Mm.
first time.
Yeah.
Um, and it's overall it's a great story because not only was this a brand new type of dinosaur, but it was found by a commercial independent guy, brought in the independent paleontologist, Mike and I, um, and then it was eventually working together with academics to get it into a good home. Mike ended up selling the first two specimens to the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. So if you want to see the original specimens of Anzu, you can just have to go to Carnegie. Uh, so it's a great thing because I got to see it from the beginning all the way through the end. It had a positive outcome for science. It's in a public institution where it can be researched and studied. Um, and yeah, so
Yeah. Wow. Now, is there, I mean, to go a little sci-fi maybe on you, do you foresee that at some point they're going to be able to like replicate dinosaurs? Like, is that
ah,
possible?
the Jurassic Park question.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Michael Crichton was brilliant. He was a brilliant writer, brilliant science sci-fi. guy. I've read a number of his books. And when he came up with the idea of using amber, mosquitoes trapped in amber, that was brilliant. It was brilliant. Is that going to happen in real life? No.
Mm.
No, but it's plausible. I mean, you can see the process, and it's a
Right.
good process. But the problem with DNA is it does not last for very long. It tends to degrade and break down. I don't remember. I keep telling myself all summer long. I kept telling myself to look up what is the oldest current DNA, and I kept forgetting to do it. But I want to say it's like 30 million years, possibly, that they've
Mm.
recovered DNA.
Wow.
So you got to double that to get back to dinosaurs.
Mm.
Um, I don't think that we're ever going to be able to replicate a dinosaur in the lab. But having said that, there's two weird ways you could go about doing it. Well, one main weird way you could go about doing it. You could be manipulating birds. You could manipulate the genetic background of birds and turn off and on certain genes as the embryo is developing.
Mm.
There's a guy in paleontology. I won't mention his name because I'll just refer to him as he who shall not be named.
Uh-huh.
If we name him, he'll show up and start talking at us.
Uh-huh.
Um, but unfortunately, I don't agree with a lot of what he wants to do. But he wrote an entire book about taking chickens and manipulating their genes so to create, a chicken with teeth, for example, or a chicken with a long reptilian tail. Whole Island of Dr. Moreau kind of stuff, right? And I think, there's even societies, there's even organizations out there around the world that are trying to de-extinct animals. They're trying to bring back the Carolina pigeon or whatever, the dodo bird, and the Tasmanian tiger, and things that we human beings directly cause the extinction of. And so this organization is trying to bring them back. We have genetic material from those animals. We have genetic mammoths, for example. I think we will see a mammoth park in our lifetime.
Really?
Yeah, they've completely mapped the genetic code of mammoths. You can find mammoth carcasses that have been buried in the tundra up in Siberia that still have meat on them. There is rumors of there's rumors of from the 1800s explorers and Native Americans encountering mammoth skeletons and mammoth carcasses and literally cutting off bits of the flesh, cooking it, and eating it. Now, I
Wow.
personally would not want a 10,000-year-old mammoth steak. I think it'd be pretty tough, but
It's aged to perfection.
well aged, well aged. But yeah, I mean there are some scientific corporations who are trying to do this. I believe there's a Japanese team, a Korean team, and a Russian team that are working on trying to bring back the mammoth. And I think we will see that at some point in our lifetime, in the next 20 years.
Wow. Huh?
Because all they have to really do is start, manipulate based off the collected DNA. CRISPR, I think, is it's above my pay grade.
Yeah, yeah,
But they have living elephants they could use as surrogates.
yeah. Wow. Well, talking about mammoth steak or whatever. What is I've heard that the beef is very good in like Wyoming and Montana. Is the beef very good in South Dakota as well?
South Dakota has better beef. Just
Oh,
looking.
I've stumbled into a contentious topic.
Yeah, that's a state territorial thing. I had a
Uh,
friend from Nebraska who insisted corn-fed beef is exactly the best stuff. I got another one from Montana who says, nope, theirs is better. Okay.
it's South Dakota. They can live in their ignorance, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's all good to me. One of the The requirements, though, if you do come to South Dakota,
Hmm.
it's required that you have a buffalo burger.
Yeah.
You have to try buffalo, either buffalo
Yeah.
tacos, buffalo steak, buffalo burgers. It is one of the requirements of visiting South Dakota.
Well, we did actually have bison last night.
Did you? Excellent.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is bison is very it's healthy for you, right? Because it's very lean.
That's what they say. Yes.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was good. And I was actually, and this will lead me to another thing. I cooked the dinner last night, and my last guest was from Utah, and he told me about a dish that they make called funeral potatoes,
Oh,
which
huh.
is just it's basically like it's like a cheesy potatoes, a little bit like maybe like potatoes au gratin.
That's
Which will lead me to ask you: is there any kind of quintessential, South Dakota dish that one has?
well. There's a few local South Dakota uh, things.
Hmm.
Like for example, out here, a lot of the restaurants have what we call ranchers tips. These are basically sirloin tips that are battered and then deep fried. So it's a heart attack special, but it's really really good, tender, very tender meat. So that's good. We already mentioned the buffalo. Buffalo. A lot of the ranchers will occasionally raise buffalo. There's large herds out here, Custer State Park and Badlands, and so on and so forth. Um, Pheasant. People come to South Dakota for hunting pheasant. They are literally all over the place in eastern South Dakota. Out west, we have pheasant. We have a lot of the grouse, the prairie chickens. So sometimes the restaurants will pick up on some of that. Elk, occasionally they will. You'll see a restaurant that will have elk in season or venison,
Hmm.
um, and of course walleye and trout. All the rivers and reservoirs have a lot of walleye in it. So
Okay.
that's so pheasant
Yum.
raviolis and fried and baked walleye.
Yum. Didn't really put one and one together. So, like when I refer to the podcast as a Lewis and Clark journey, that kind of that hits home with South Dakota
Oh,
since the
absolutely.
Missouri goes right through.
Yeah, in
So,
fact, and that's it's interesting you brought that up. The first documented fossil in South Dakota was actually by Lewis and Clark. They were going up the Missouri River nearby with the town of Chamberlain, what would eventually become Chamberlain, South Dakota. And I think it was in Clark's diary, his journal. He wrote that they were surveying the river and they climbed up to a bluff about um, it was about 40 feet up above the river, and from and I think Clark wrote that they had found the bones of some immense fish that was 60 feet long.
hmm,
Yeah, well, we don't get fish 60 feet long, but he thought it
yeah,
was. They ended up
right.
collecting some of those bones, and I think they tried to send them back to Washington, D.C., to Jefferson, who is considered the first American paleontologist. I don't know if you knew
Huh?
that or not.
I did not. No.
Jefferson. One of the reasons why he sent Lewis and Clark out west, obviously to find the Northwest Passage, but he also was under the impression that he thought there might be living populations of mammoths out in the west, and he wanted Lewis and Clark to collect fossils as they went. He wanted them to look for living mammoth populations. Um, Jefferson himself has a giant ground sloth named after him, Megalonyx jeffersoni.
Wow.
He actually described it. Jefferson was an amazing person, obviously, and the original Jeffersonian.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, he's considered one of the first American paleontologists. He described a variety of different fossils in his lifetime. He collected them in Virginia.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, getting back to Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark sends the bones of this fish, this 60-foot fish or whatever it was, back east. I don't think they made it. I think they lost him in transport. Likely, what Lewis and Clark found was a big mosasaur skeleton. Um, they were going along the Missouri, along a rock unit called the Pier Shale. Pier Shale is about 80 million years old, and it was basically a deep marine rock unit. This was back during the middle to late Cretaceous when there was this massive seaway that split North America in half. It was bound on the east by the Appalachians and the Ozarks, which are very old mountain ranges, and bound on the west by the early Rockies, and everything in between was all underwater.
Oh wow.
You had Texas underwater, Nebraska, Kansas, South Dakota, North Dakota, parts of Wyoming, Montana, Arizona, all underwater up into Canada. So anyway, they were in this rock unit called the Pier Shale, and they likely found a mosasaur, which is a giant marine lizard. What do we have here? There it is. Okay. Giant marine lizard, and if you know where to look, they are fairly common. This is pretty fragile. I'm going to hopefully not drop this. That would be bad for your viewers.
Yeah, for you too.
And for me
Wow.
too. Well, we've got super glue. I could glue it back. That's what they make super glue for. This is
That is amazing.
yeah, this is one of the skeletons that we're working on this summer.
Uh-huh.
We acquired a new ranch last year, and it was a small ranch. So I didn't expect to find much. And this year we found a sea turtle last year and a mosasaur skull, and this year we found 4 more mosasaur skeletons and 2 more sea turtles and a whole bunch of different fish. I'll use this one. This was a little bit more stable. This was a little easier to show and tell. That is a vertebrae. It's called the axis. I'm sorry. Yes, the axis bone. It's the second vertebrae in the neck.
Wow.
And just beautiful preservation.
Yeah.
This is where the spinal cord would go. That little hole right there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we go into the brain.
Wow.
Yeah. So this year, 4 mosasaur skeletons, and that's what I was doing just this last few days. We were camping out on a mosasaur skeleton called Shannon's mosasaur, and that's what that one is. It took us 3 days to build a giant jacket and kind of lift it up.
Wow. Well, I feel like I have so many more questions that I feel like this conversation could go on for hours. but I don't want to incur to get much more into your times, and it sounds like you have a lot of other things to do. I guess just before we wrap up, can I ask, I guess, what gives you hope at the end of the day?
Yeah, I didn't realize how long we've been talking.
Yeah.
I can ramble. Like I said, I have a BS degree. It's well used. What gives me hope? That's a pretty tough question in our current chaotic times. We live in some pretty weird, strange times. I'll say that. What gives me hope is that there's a lot more people in the middle than I think the media gives us credit for in the United States. I think right now we have the extremes. Some of the extremes are in control of our political systems. The extremes are in control of our media systems. They're in control of our educational systems. So those are 3 things I'm not happy about. And you've got the extremes on the left, and you got the extremes on the right, blah, 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 and they're constantly fighting. But what gives me hope is that there's a whole lot of people in the middle who are tired of it. We're sick and tired of the constant, bitter, back and forth nonsense, the extremist ideas, the extremist viewpoints. And I think when I go around the country in my travels, I've met a lot of people from South Dakota to North Dakota to Florida. There's a lot more people in the middle who are reasonable, they're rational, they're not racist, they're not sexist, not homophobic. They are reasonable, good people. And I think we need to hear more from them. I think we need to pull us together to the middle and start solving problems instead of creating new ones. Because right
Yeah.
now the two extremes are creating a lot of problems. Um, that's just my libertarian take on things.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I like to think that this podcast is kind of contributing the more middle ground voices to the big media. That I guess all the swirl of people talking and things happening, and similar to you, like with the podcast, I think there's so many people that when you start talking and you learn it, there's so much more decency out there than we're led to believe, because that doesn't get eyeballs, it doesn't get clicks, it doesn't get you ad revenue.
It's not a sexy media story.
Yeah, to
You know?
say people who disagree and have a conversation and they learned about each other.
Yeah,
End of
yeah.
story.
The media makes its money by creating controversy
Yeah,
most of the time.
yeah.
Obviously, you're an exception, but
Thank you.
uh, you don't want to create
Uh,
controversy. You want to bring
yeah,
people.
yeah,
And politicians are the same way. Politicians don't get power, they don't get money, they don't get influence unless they're creating a problem so that they can magically solve it. So they're, you've got the media personal wants the controversy, the political camp on both sides want the controversy, and they both make money from the process,
yeah,
and they both get power from the process. And I think we just need to cut them off.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Right,
start communicating and working
right.
together with one another.
Yeah.
Um,
And you
I've got
don't
a
want to
lot of
resolve the controversy, because then you lose your reason to get funding to ask
yes,
people for money. So you got to keep it going.
exactly. You have to keep it going.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks out there who buy into it.
yeah,
They think that one side or the other is trying to help them and push forward their ideas and agendas, but they're not really looking to solve the problem. They're looking to get people fired up, to get votes, to get money, to get donations. And the same applies to the media. And the same, in many ways, applies to the educational systems we have today. That's a whole nother topic.
yeah,
I'll get
yeah.
off my soapbox.
Well, thank you so much for this really fascinating conversation. I've enjoyed learning about you, all the work you're doing, dinosaurs, and it's a bit about South Dakota. This has been really fantastic conversation. I appreciate it.
Well, it was great having meeting you and being on the show, and I hope we we've taught some people about paleontology and maybe changed a few minds here.
Yeah, and I hope to. We haven't been to South Dakota yet, so I hope to swing out there at some point. I know where to start.
Absolutely,
Oh,
come on up on the
is there a
dinosaur.
website? Is there a website for you?
Sure. It's www.paleoadventures.com. We just purchased a new building, so we're going to be building our own private museum out here. Got an 8,000 square foot museum with 7 acres of land. We're going to do some, be able to keep some of our South Dakota dinosaurs in South Dakota. We and I'll be able to do a lot more of my educational programs and research now that we have a much bigger facility to work out of. So
Fantastic.
we're hoping that museum will be up and running by May 1st. I got 6 months to put it all together.
All
I'll be up late. So
right.
yeah,
All right.
tours. As far as
Awesome.
the tours are concerned, we start taking reservations usually around Christmas time, and then by January we're full. So it's always best to book early.
Okay. All right. Well, note that for everybody. And thank you to all the viewers and listeners out there. May you go out and explore our country with curiosity, respect, compassion, and humility. All right. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.